Chapter 7, A Message Full of Holes. It was the printing that sparked Lina's curiosity. It was not handwriting, or if it was the neatest, most regular handwriting she'd ever seen. It was more like the letters printed on cans of food or along the sides of pencils. Something other than a hand had written these words, a machine of some kind. This was the writing of the builders, and so this piece of paper must have come from the builders too. Lina gathered up the scraps of paper from the floor and gently pried open Poppy's fists and mouth to extract the crumpled wads. She put all this into the dented box and carried it to her room. That evening, Granny and the baby were both asleep a little after 8. Lina had nearly an hour to examine her discovery. She took the scraps from the box and spread them out on the table in her bedroom. The paper was thick. At each torn edge was a fringe of tangled fibers. There were many little pieces and one big piece with so many holes that it looked like lace. The chewed bits were beyond saving. They were almost a paste. But Lina spread out the big lacy piece and saw that on one edge of it, which was still intact, was a column of numbers. She collected all the dry scraps and figured out where they fit into the large paper. When she had arranged them as well as she could, this is what she had. Lina could make sense of only a few words here and there. Even so, something about this tattered document was exciting. It was not anything like Lina had ever seen. She stared at the very first word at the top of the page, instra, and she suddenly knew what it meant, what it must be. She'd seen it often at school. It was the beginning of instructions. Her heart began knocking at her chest like a fist at the door. She had found something. She had found something strange and important. Instructions for something. But for what? And how terrible that Poppy had found them first and ruined it. It occurred to Lina that this might be what her grandmother was talking about so long ago. Perhaps this was the thing that was lost. But of course, not knowing that it had been lost, Granny wouldn't have recognized the box when she saw it. She would have tossed it out of the closet just as carelessly as she tossed everything else. Anyhow, it didn't matter whether this was the thing or not the thing. It was a mystery in itself, whatever it was, and Lina was determined to solve it. The first step was to stick the scraps of paper down. So they were so light that a breath could scatter them. She had a bit of glue left in her old bottle. Painstakingly, she put a dot of glue on each of the scraps and pressed each one of on its place on on one of her precious remaining whole sheets of paper. She put another piece of paper on top of this and set the box on top to flatten everything down. Just as she finished, the lights went out. She'd forgotten to keep an eye on the clock on her windowsill. She had to undress and get into bed in the dark. She was too excited to sleep that much that night. Her mind whirled around, trying to think what the message she had found might be. She felt sure it had something to do with saving the city. What if the instructions were for fixing electricity or for making a movable light? That would change everything. When the lights went on in the morning, she had a few minutes before Poppy wakened to work on the puzzle. But there were so many words missing. How could she ever make sense of such a jumble? As she pulled on her red jacket and tied the frayed and knotted laces of her shoes, she thought about it. If the paper was important, she couldn't keep it to herself, but who could she tell? Maybe the messenger captain? She would know about things like official documents. Captain Flurry, Lina said when she got to work. Would you have time to come home with me later today, just for a minute? I found something I'd like to show you. Found what? Asked Captain Flurry. Some paper with writing on it. I think it might be important. Captain Flurry raised her skinny eyebrows. What do you mean important? Well, I'm not sure. Maybe it isn't. But would you look at it anyway? So that evening, Captain Flurry came home with Lina and peered at the bits of paper. She bent down and inspected the writing. Fall, she said. Axe? Rem? Aunt? What kind of words are those? I don't know, said Lina. The words are all broken up because Poppy chewed on them. I see, said Captain Flurry. She poked at the paper. This looks like instructions for something, she said. A recipe, I suppose. Small steel pan. That would be what you used to cook with. But who would have such small, perfect writing? That's the way they wrote in the old days, said Captain Flurry. It would be a very old recipe. But then why would they have kept it in this beautiful box? She showed the box to Captain Flurry. I think it was locked up in here for some time, and you wouldn't lock up something unless it was important. But Captain Flurry didn't seem to have heard her. Or, she said, it could be a school exercise, someone's homework that never got turned in. But have you ever seen paper like this? Doesn't it look as if it came from someplace else and not here? Captain Flurry straightened up. A look of puzzlement came over her face. There is nowhere here but here, she said. She put both her hands on Lina's shoulders. You, my dear, are letting your imagination run away with you. Are you overtired, Lina? Are you anxious? I could put you on short days for a while. No, said Lina. I'm fine. I am. But I don't know what to do about... She gestured toward the paper. Never mind, said Captain Flurry. Don't think about it. Throw it away. You're worrying too much. I know. We all are. There's so much to worry about, but we mustn't let it unsettle us. She gave Lina a long look. Her eyes were the color of dishwater. Help is coming, she said. Help? Help, yes, coming to save us. Who is? Captain Flurry bent down and lowered her voice as if telling a secret. Who built the city, dear? The builders. That's right, and the builders will come again and show us the way. They will? Very soon, said Captain Flurry. How do you know? Captain Flurry straightened up again and clapped a hand over her heart. I know it here, she said, and I've seen it in a dream. So have all of us, all the believers. So that's what they believe, Lina thought. And Captain Flurry is one of them. She wondered how the captain could feel so sure just because she'd seen it in a dream. Maybe it's the same for her as the sparkling city for Lina. She wanted it to be true. The captain's face lit up. I know what you must do, dear. Come to one of our meetings. It would lift your heart. We sing. Oh, said Lina, thank you, but I'm not sure maybe sometime. She tried to be polite, but she knew she wouldn't go. She didn't want to stand around waiting for the builders. She had other things to do. Captain Flurry patted her arm. No pressure, dear, she said. If you change your mind, let me know. But take my advice. Forget about your little puzzle project. Lie down and take a nap. Clears the mind. Her narrow face beamed kindness down at Lina. You take tomorrow off, she said. She raised a hand goodbye and went down the stairs. Lina took advantage of her day off to go to the supply depot to see Lizzie Biscoe. Lizzie was quick and smart. She might have some good ideas. At the supply depot, crowds of shopkeepers stood in long, disorderly lines that stretched out the door. They pushed and jostled and snapped impatiently at each other. Lina joined them, but they seemed so frantic that they frightened her a little. They must be very sure now that the supplies are running low, she thought, and they're determined to get what they can before it's too late. When she got close to the head of the line, she heard the same conversation several times. Sorry, the clerk would say when a shopkeeper asked for 10 packets of sewing needles and a dozen drinking glasses, or 20 packages of light bulbs. There's a severe shortage on that item. You can only have one. Or else the clerk would say, sorry, we're out of that entirely. Forever? Forever. Lina knew that it hadn't always been this way. When Ember was a young city, the storerooms were full. They had everything the citizens could want. So much it seemed that the supplies would never run out. Lina's grandmother had told her that school children were given a tour of the storerooms as part of their education. They took an elevator from the street level to a long, curvy tunnel with doors on both sides and other tunnels branching off of it. The guide led the tour down the long passages, opening one door and the other. This area, would say, is canned goods. Next we come to school supplies, and around this bend we have kitchenware. Next come carpentry tools. At each door the children crowded against each other to see. Every room was different, Granny told Lina. Boxes of toothpaste in one room, bottles of cooking oil, bars of soap, boxes of pills. There were 20 rooms for vitamin pills. One room was stacked with hundreds of cans of fruit. There was something called pineapple. I remember that one especially. What was pineapple? Asked Lina. It was yellow and sweet, said Granny with a dreamy look in her eyes. I had it 4 times before it ran out. But these tours had been discontinued long before Lina was born. The storerooms, people said, were no longer a pleasure to look at. Their dusty shelves stood mostly empty now. It was rumored that in some rooms there was nothing left at all. A child seeing the rooms where powdered milk had been stored, or the rooms that stored bandages or socks or pins or notebooks, or most of all, the dozens of rooms that had once held thousands of light bulbs, would not feel as earlier generations of children had. The ember was endlessly rich. Today's children, if they were to tour the storerooms, would feel afraid. Thinking about this, Lina waited in line of people at Lizzie's station. When she got to the front, she leaned forward on her elbows in the corner and whispered, "Lizzie, can you meet me after you're through with work? I'll wait for you right outside the door." Lizzie nodded eagerly. At 4 o'clock, Lizzie trotted out from the office door, and Lina said to her, "Will you come home with me for a minute? I want to show you something." "Sure," said Lizzie. As they walked, Lizzie said, "My wrist is killing me from writing all day," she said. "You have to write it in the tiniest letters to save paper. I get a terrible cramp in my wrist, and my fingers. The people are so rude. Today, they are worse than ever. I said to some guy, 'You can't have 15 cans of corn. You can only have 3. And he said, 'Look, don't tell me that. I saw plenty of cans in the Pot Street Market yesterday.' And I said, 'Well, that's why there aren't so many left today.' And he said, 'Don't be smart with me, carrot head.' But what am I supposed to do? I can't just make cans of corn I can't make cans of corn out of thin air." They passed through Harkin Square, around the Gathering Hall, and down Roving Street, where 3 floodlights were out, making a cave of shadow. "Lizzie," said Lina, interrupting a flow of talk, "is it true about light bulbs?" "Is what true?" "That there aren't many left?" Lizzie shrugged. "I don't know. They hardly ever let us go downstairs in the storerooms. All we see are the reports that the carriers turn in. How many forks in room 1146? How many doorknobs in 3291? How many children's shoes in 2249? But when you see the report for the light bulb room, what does it say?" "Oh, I never get to see that one. That one and only a few others, like vitamin reports, are only a few people can see." "Who?" "Oh, the mayor, an old flab face." Lina looked questioningly. "You know, Farlow Batten, the head of storerooms. Oh, he's so mean, Lina. You would just hate him. He counts us late if we come in even 2 minutes after 8. He looks over our shoulders as we're writing, which is awful because he has bad breath. And he runs his finger over what we've written and says, 'This word is illegible. That word is illegible. These numbers are illegible.' Ugh, that's his favorite word, illegible."